Everything I knew about money, I learned from my father. Some of it was right, some of it cost me. Here's what I've been sitting with for the past few years. Your parents didn't give you bad financial advice. They gave you advice that worked for an economy that doesn't exist anymore. 5 specific rules. Rules that protected them, built their lives, kept them out of trouble. Those same 5 rules, running unchanged in your life right now, are costing you money in a way that doesn't show up anywhere you can see it. No statement, no notification. Just a slow, invisible drain. And the institutions that should have sent the update, they profit from you never getting it. Here's how this happened. Here's what makes this so hard to catch. Their advice worked. That is the trap. If it had failed immediately, if their parents had told them to save in the bank and they'd watch their money disappear, they would have updated the rules. They would have come to you and said, look, I tried this, it didn't work, here's what I know now. But that's not what happened. Their parents saved in the bank and retired okay. They stayed loyal to the company and the pension was there. They paid off the house early and felt safe and free. The evidence, their whole lives, told them these rules were permanent. The rules weren't permanent. They were era-specific. The success made them look like laws of nature when they were really, call it, software. A financial operating system calibrated to a specific moment in time. You didn't choose your first financial operating system. You didn't download it. You didn't agree to the terms. It was installed before you could read, by people who loved you, using the best information they had. And the information was good for its moment, but the savings rates changed. The pension structure changed. The job market changed. The cost of a house changed. The OS didn't get a patch. So here you are running 1,985 software on 2,026 hardware, and everything has slowed to a crawl, and you don't know why because nobody told you there was a version update. So let's run the update. 5 rules. What the math said then, what the math says now, what the gap costs you. Rule 1. Save money in the bank. In 1985, your parents' savings account paid somewhere between 5 and 8% annually. Inflation was running around 4 to 5%. Real return? Roughly flat to slightly positive. Boring, sure, but rational. The advice made sense. Keep your money safe. Earn a little, stay liquid. Now look at what that same advice does in 2026. The national average savings account rate right now is 0.6%. The big banks, Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, some of them are paying 0.01%. And inflation is running at about 2.5%. Do that math for 1 second. Your money earns 60 cents a year on every 100. Inflation costs you about $2.50 on that same 100. You're losing nearly $2 in purchasing power every year, while your balance says it's growing. Here's what that looks like over 10 years on 10,000. That 10 grand sitting in a standard savings account at the national average becomes 10,616. 10 years of patience. 10 years of doing the responsible thing. 10,600 bucks. Now take that same 10 grand and put it in a basic index fund at a conservative 8% annual return. After 10 years, you have 21,589. The gap between those two numbers is 10,973. Call it 11 grand, gone. Not because you did something reckless, because you did exactly what you were told and the advice hadn't been updated. That's not a mistake. That's the price of running outdated software. Rule 2, pay off your house as fast as possible. This one is actually the most honest example of everything I'm trying to tell you because the math on this rule has been right, then wrong, then something in between, depending on nothing except the number printed on your mortgage paperwork. In 1985, your parents had a mortgage rate somewhere around 13%. Maybe higher in 1981, it hit almost 17%. At 13%, paying down your debt early was the best financial decision available. Nothing in the market was reliably going to beat 13% guaranteed return. The advice was mathematically correct. Then something happened, and I mean the math just flipped. In 2020 and 2021, mortgage rates hit historic lows, 2.65%, 3%. Millions of people locked in rates that hadn't been seen in living memory. And suddenly the math flipped completely. If you have a 3% mortgage and you're throwing extra money at it, you're forcing yourself into a 3% return. Meanwhile, a basic index fund is returning 8% on average. The gap between those two choices on 50,000 in extra payments over 10 years, you're looking at as much as 34 grand in foregone growth. You're choosing the lower return because the advice told you debt is dangerous. The debt is 3%. The alternative is 8%. The danger is the advice, not the loan. Right now, in early 2026, rates are sitting around 6%. And honestly, at that number, you're close to break even. Sometimes paying it down makes sense. Sometimes investing does. It depends on your tax situation, your risk tolerance, how long you plan to stay in the house. The rule doesn't give you that nuance. The rule just says pay it off. Which version of that rule are you running right now? Do you even know the number on your loan? The rule hasn't changed. The number on your loan has. That's the point. Run your own math. Rule 3. Don't invest, it's gambling. This is the one that has a price tag you can actually calculate. Your parents watched markets crash. They watched people lose everything. And they came to you with a warning that felt like love. Don't gamble with money you can't afford to lose. Stay safe. Keep it where you can see it. The instinct came from real experience. The conclusion drew the wrong lesson. Here's what that warning has cost. Take 2 people. One starts putting $200 a month into a basic index fund at age 25. The other wade's got the gambling warning, stayed cautious, doesn't start until 35. Same $200 a month. Same 8% return. First person, 40 years of compounding to age 65, $702,856. Second person, 30 years of compounding to 65, $298,072. The gap between those 2 people is $404,784, 400 grand. Because one of them got a warning at 25 and believed it for 10 years, the gambling warning your parents gave you has a price tag. It's $400,000. Now, and I need to sit with this for a second, because this is where the grief lives. They didn't know that. They couldn't have known that. The market was terrifying to them in ways that made perfect sense given what they'd seen. They were protecting you. That protection had a cost they couldn't see and nobody showed them. My father worked 60 hours a week for 30 years. Immigrant. Did everything right by every rule he knew. Every rule. He saved carefully. He stayed loyal. He kept his money where he could see it. He never retired. Not because he failed, he didn't fail. He did exactly what the playbook said. The playbook just didn't account for what the economy would do to the contract underneath it. He didn't know. How could he? He gave me the map that kept him alive. He just didn't know the roads had changed. And I'm not angry at him. I'm not. But I sat with that for a long time before I could name what I actually felt. It was grief. Grief that the system consumed his best years by the rules. Grief that the advice was given with love and taken with love and still cost both of us something we can't get back. That's not a reason for anger at him. It's a reason to look clearly at who designed the system and who profits from the playbook staying unchanged. Because here's rule 4. Stay at your job. Loyalty pays. In 1985, it literally paid. About 38 to 40% of private sector workers had access to a defined benefit pension. You know what that is? You stay 20, 30 years, you get a monthly check for the rest of your life. The contract was real. Loyalty was a rational economic strategy because the reward was guaranteed and substantial. The advice wasn't just cultural, it was backed by math. Now, private sector defined benefit pension coverage. Around 15%. That's not a rounding error. That's the contract being dissolved. The employers kept the loyalty culture, the language of stability, of dedication, of not being a quitter, and quietly removed the thing that made loyalty worth it. What's left is the frame without the payout. Here's what job loyalty costs in a market where the pension is gone. Take someone starting at 45 grand a year. Company raises run about 2.5% annually. That's roughly what stayers get. Stay for 10 years and you're making around $57,400. Now take that same person, same starting point, 2 strategic moves, year 3 and year 6, each one picking up about 10%. Conservative. By year 10, they're making around 65 grand. The cumulative 10-year earnings gap between those 2 paths. And look, this is a modeled estimate. I want to be straight with you about that, but we're looking at somewhere between 45 and 60,000 in the bank. Real money. Not because the stayer is less talented, because they're following a loyalty script that no longer has a reciprocal contract attached to it. They stayed for a pension. The pension is gone. The loyalty is still there. The reward isn't. Rule 5. Avoid credit cards. They're dangerous. This one lands differently than the others because your parents weren't wrong that credit cards can destroy you. The trap is real. The debt spiral is real. The warning came from a real place. What they couldn't have known is what not having a credit history would cost you on the other side of your life. Because here's how it actually works. No credit card use means no credit history. No credit history means a low FICO score. And a low FICO score means that when you go to buy a house, the biggest financial transaction most people will ever make, you are paying a premium every single month for the rest of your loan. Here's the number. The difference between a 760 or above credit score and a 620-something score on a standard home loan, we're talking a $400,000 30-year fixed, is about $165 a month. Over 30 years, that's $59,274 in additional interest, paid, gone. Credit cards are dangerous is a $59,000 sentence, not because the cards ruined you, because avoiding them cost you the score that costs you on the loan. So, 5 rules. The math on 3 of them alone, save in the bank, don't invest, avoid credit cards, adds up to a potential lifetime cost approaching $500,000. And rules 2 and 4 add tens of thousands more. These aren't small adjustments. This is the gap between the financial life you were handed and the one you could build. Now, I want to be very direct about something before we talk about what to do. I'm not here to make you angry at your parents. That would be the wrong target entirely. They didn't design this system. They played it the only way they knew how. The anger, and there is something worth being angry about here, belongs at the institutions that should have sent the update and made a calculated decision not to. Chase Bank pays you 0.01% on your savings. They lend that same money at 8 to 12%. The spread between those two numbers is how they pay for their buildings and their executives. And somewhere in there, a banker's kid's college tuition on the float from your savings account, sitting safe. They have zero financial incentive to tell you about high-yield accounts or index funds. Every dollar that stays in that savings account is a profitable passive deposit for them. Actually, think about that for a second. The software update notification came in, and your dad called and said, don't install it, because the last version worked fine for him in 1987. That's not your dad's fault. That's the update being suppressed by everyone who profits from you running the old version. Your employer uses the loyalty culture to keep wages below market rate. Not all of them, not always, but structurally that's what's happening. The stability and dedication framing serves a function. The function is that you don't test the market and find out what you're actually worth. The school system never taught any of this, and that vacuum isn't accidental. Financial literacy curricula have faced resistance from industries that benefit from financial confusion. The vacuum is maintained by the people who profit from it. Every institution that should have sent the update knew what the update contained. They just had better reasons not to send it. So here's what you actually do. And I want to be clear, this is not throw out everything your parents told you. Some of what they gave you transfers directly and completely. Spend less than you earn. Don't take on debt you can't service. Keep a buffer. Those rules don't have an expiration date. What I'm talking about is a selective update. Keep the values, discipline, caution, responsibility. Update the tactics where you keep money, whether to invest when it's worth leaving a job. Honor the intent. Audit the application. The first move takes about 10 minutes, and honestly, this one bothers me that more people don't know about it. If you have savings above your emergency fund, above whatever number makes you feel safe at 3 in the morning, any of that money sitting in a standard bank account is losing real value every day. Move it to a high-yield savings account. Right now, OpenBank is offering 4.09%. That's federally insured, that's online, there are no fees. On 10 grand, you go from $60 a year in interest to $400. That's not investing. That's just not leaving money on the floor. Actually, let me back up 1 second. Before you move anything, you need to know where you're starting. The second move is free and takes 5 minutes. Check your FICO score. Experian and Credit Karma both do it at no cost, no card required. If you've been avoiding credit cards your whole life, your score might be lower than you think, and you need to know that before you need a mortgage. The $59,000 problem is preventable, but only if you start building now. Third move in this one, look, there's no excuse for leaving this on the table. If your employer offers any kind of 401k match, confirm you're at least hitting the match threshold. The 2025 employee contribution limit is $23,500. I don't care what your parents said about the stock market. An employer match is an immediate 50 to 100% return before a single dollar is invested. That's not investing. That's accepting money that already exists in your compensation package. And look, I know that sounds obvious. It isn't. Most people in this income range aren't hitting it. After that, run a salary audit on yourself. LinkedIn salary, Glassdoor, levels.fyi. The data's out there and it's free. What does your role actually pay in the current market? If there's a gap of 15% or more between what you're earning and what the market would pay for your skills, you have information. What you do with it is your choice. But you should know the number. You should know the number. That's it. That's the whole move. You can't make a decision you don't know you're making. And the fifth move, the one that matters most long term. Pick one rule from your parents' playbook, just one that you've never actually questioned. The one that feels most true, most obvious, most like just the way things work. That's the one most likely to need an update. Run the 2026 math on it. Don't audit everything at once. One rule. This week, start the practice. The advice was right. The economy changed. 5 rules that protected your parents are costing you money in a system they didn't design for and couldn't have anticipated. And every institution that should have told you, that should have told both of you, made a different calculation. You don't have to reject your parents to update the playbook. You don't have to choose between honoring them and building something different. The values, the discipline, the caution, the refusal to be careless with what you've earned, those are right. Those transfer. What needs a patch is the tactics, where to keep money, whether to invest, when it's worth moving. That's the update. My father gave me the best map he had. I'm drawing a new one, not to replace his, to go somewhere he couldn't. Now you know which roads changed.